What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here alongside Josh Davis. We are back with the Wednesday Link Live, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Maybe you mute the Phillies game right now. They're going to win this one anyway. They're starting to roll, and hang out with us for the next 45 minutes to an hour as we are getting you ready for Week 6 of the National Football League. Josh, good evening, and Bryce Harper, good evening as well. 2 home runs already.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, no joke.
Oh,
He is absolutely doing well. Can you hear me okay? Because I'm getting a
I
little
can
bit
hear
of
you.
kind of buffering back and forth. So it may be my channel, but
Yes, I
you're good?
think that it just smoothed out.
Okay,
It just smoothed
cool.
out. Try it again. We got to
Okay,
work
all
on
right,
that,
cool.
Josh.
Yeah, but no, I agree. As far as that Phillies game, can
Ooh,
you
we
get
got some
okay,
serious
I'm
buffer.
really delayed. I'm gonna come back because we're having technical
Okay.
difficulties again.
All
So
right.
I'm gonna
Go ahead. All right, just me for
change
a
it in.
second.
Yep.
Let Josh go ahead and load back in here. He's going to leave and then go ahead and come back. Technical difficulties do happen. Welcome you guys in. I am back for our Wednesday Link Live. I was not here last week. Surgery literally a day ago on Wednesday of this past week. And so we're now over a week in and still can't sit. We're kneeling for this one. So we're going to see how long we can kneel. But welcome in a bunch of people here who are, of course, joining us right now. Appreciate you guys. Josh is going to be here any second as he's having a little bit of internet difficulties, but should be back very, very soon. Interesting topics this evening. We need to get into the Eagles linebacker situation. I did not think that Nakobe Dean coming back was going to be as polarizing as it's been. There's a very, very two-sided argument of you got to play Nakobe Dean immediately and don't touch Nicholas Morrow and Zach Cunningham. They need to stay as is. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what Josh thinks about that. I'm on the opinion that, listen, Kobe Dean was the winner of the entire linebacker battle during training camp. They didn't have a linebacker one. Kobe Dean earned linebacker one. Now it's going to be very, very interesting to see what they're going to do bringing him back after Morrow and Zach Cunningham have been absolutely fantastic. Love your guys' thoughts down below. Let's try and get Josh back in here as he should be back. That looks better. What's up, Josh?
Hopefully. Okay. What's up? Yeah, we're
Okay.
having some technical difficulties before. There's some storms in the area in DFW, so I feel like that's maybe what it is. I don't know. We tried to reboot it, so hopefully we're good. But yeah, great to be back on a Wednesday. Obviously, with you leading, I think you were talking a little bit about the reasons why we had canceled in the past. But always good to be able to talk on a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's been fun. I was talking as we were waiting for you to come back in here, starting with the linebacker situation. I was telling people I'm surprised at how polarizing Dean coming back has been on at least Eagles Twitter. My comment section is full of people arguing between play Dean immediately, bench Nakobe Dean, you got to keep Zach Cunningham and Nicholas Morrow running. What do you do if Dean is ready to go? He did say today he's almost ready to go. Doesn't mean he's going to play on Sunday. Doesn't mean he's not. We'll see. What would you do right now if Dean says, I'm good to go? Who are your two starting linebackers?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to start Dean, honestly. And I just threw a poll up there for anybody who wants to answer. Would you start Nakobe Dean? Yes or no? I mean, personally, I would, because I guess there's a lot of ramifications that come from that, right? I mean, you drafted Nakobe Dean to be the guy. Now, of course,
Mm-hmm.
we've seen the linebackers have been phenomenal, especially Nicholas Morrow, because he's been, I don't know what the updated rankings are, but as of last week, he was the number 2 PFF graded linebacker in the league behind Roquan Smith. So, that speaks for itself. He's been phenomenal. But, it's like if Nakobe Dean is going to be your guy, it kind of tells him, right? I mean, that's speaking to him saying like, yeah, we don't really trust you, even though you got injured. We had really high hopes. Do
Yeah.
you move him in there for a potentially Zach Cunningham? I know the size difference and everything. You're possibly looking at like that, but I don't know. To me personally, I would say you got to go with Nakobe Dean. And also, too, I mean, a great point to bring up is you've got the Jets here, and there's never an easy win, never a for sure, but a seemingly more easy win potential against the Jets versus the following week, which we're both going to be there for the game against the Dolphins. If he's ready to go, I'd like for him to kind of shake off the rust, so to speak, against the Jets so that he
Yeah.
could be good to go for the Dolphins, because that's going to be a lot more difficult of a game. But personally, I think if Nakobe Dean was your guy to start the season just because of an injury, I know some guys played well. I don't think that you just say, yeah, let's go ahead and take him out. It's probably a different case of, hey, Reed Blankenship played well for CJ Gardner-Johnson, and then he returned. A little bit different scenario there, but still to the sense of your starter at the start of the season was a Nakobe Dean. I feel like you still got to go in that direction.
Yeah, I understand people saying that Cunningham's bigger, and so you need him to stop the run. the Eagles are great against the run, and it's not simply because Zach Cunningham's 6'3", right? They're really good against the run because their defensive line is very good against the run. I agree with you. I think reps this weekend are going to be good for him, and you can still mix people in there. They put Sidney Brown at safety sometimes. They move Terrell Edmonds at safety sometimes. I mean, Justin Evans doesn't start every single snap, and so I think it's a much to do about nothing because you better have 3 good linebackers than 2, right? I mean, come on. We've been Philadelphia Eagle fans our entire
Yeah.
lives. How many years have we not had 1 good linebacker? It's been a long time. So I think you work Dean back in there. I do think you can't punish Morrow, though, right? I don't think you can take snaps away from Nicholas Morrow because you already cut him once. You already told him he wasn't good enough. Now he's playing like the second best linebacker, top 3 linebacker in the National Football League. What do you do? Tell him he's not good enough again, despite what the numbers are saying? It doesn't make sense. So I think Cunningham would be the odd man out. But again, run situations, sure. Maybe you keep Morrow and Cunningham, or Dean and Cunningham. Passing situations, then maybe you go with Morrow and Nakobe Dean. It's not like Morrow's a great pass defender in terms of stopping linebackers and slot receivers, but overall he's been good enough, and it's really, really hard for me to just dump him. But Dean, like you said earlier, did win the starting linebacker battle in training camp. They love what they saw from this guy until he got hurt. You got to put him out there and see what happens. Welcome to a bunch of people watching us tonight. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Matt Kreider says, do you guys have a podcast? If not, you should. I think you're listening to the podcast right now. I think this is
Oh,
the
there you go.
podcast with video. I mean,
Yeah,
come on. This is
absolutely.
kind of what it is, huh?
It's the weekly one. There it is.
Yeah, the weekly one. Go Phillies, Braves, 20-year-old, 5 balls to start. Yeah, Phillies looks like they're going to roll tonight. Pretty nice there. If Dean is ready, he should start, says Cranky. And Sean says we need to start Dean. He needs the reps. I would probably agree with that. I saw a comment earlier, Josh, that I think is interesting, at least bringing up here. And that is, of course, the trade deadline stuff, because as trade deadline gets closer and closer, every Eagle fan thinks the Eagles are going to make 4 moves for all the top stars who are going to be available. Jerry Jeudy's name has popped up big time today as being somebody that Denver is actively listening to trade offers. We heard that this offseason. Now we hear it again. Denver's going to start purging people. That seems all but assured. But trading
Mm-hmm.
for a wide receiver, I'm curious your thoughts on this. I'm out. Listen, Quez has not been great. You have Olamide Zaccheaus, though. What is a number 3 receiver going to do in terms of targets in this already target-heavy system to DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown? Why would you give up draft capital for a guy who you're barely going to use? It just doesn't make sense. If they aren't using Quez, they barely use Olamide Zaccheaus. Why are you trading for another receiver? I'm fully out on it.
I agree. Yes, I'm 100% with you. There's too many mouths to feed as it is. Again, look at who may not be able to get the games. Sirianni's mentioned it in multiple press conferences. Brian Johnson is. I feel like this is just the constant theme that we talk about, certainly with the receiving game, because you're not going to have. It's almost impossible where if you have a Dallas Goedert, if you have DeVonta Smith, if you have AJ Brown, that all the players are going to be happy. Now, are they going to voice their frustrations? Not all the time, depending who we're talking
Right.
about, but some of them they might actually say something. So there's already enough with not enough to go around in terms of that air attack that no, it would be great. Like in terms of video game numbers, playing Madden, sure, it'd be awesome to have a third, excellent receiver to add to that mix. But realistically, the way this offense runs, and then you also mentioned DeAndre Swift, who quite honestly, I'm not sure that we've seen enough of him in the passing game. We started to see a little bit more, but
Yeah.
as you implement that too, I just don't think that there's enough to go around. So I'm out on it as well. You talk about there is some draft capital, how we can do some creative things with the cap, in terms of try to move it down for years down the line, something like that. So it's a possibility. But if it's me and we're trying to make an acquisition, I mean, why waste it? It's not really, I guess, a full waste, but it feels like somewhat of a waste when you could
Yeah.
spend it towards the defensive side. I know you did a show about it, kind of talking about Justin Simmons and other players. You mentioned the Broncos and being open to essentially trading or possibly looking at trading anyone except
Yeah.
for Patrick Surtain as the report. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm in favor of, if you're going to go make an acquisition, it's got to be a defensive player. But then I guess that brings up a question I have for you. Is Justin Simmons, or I guess take a look across the league, is there a main target? And probably I should preface it by saying a realistic target
Yeah.
across the league that you're saying this is a potential ad for the Eagles to make?
Yeah, Simmons' names pops up. We talked about Buda Baker for the past 9 months, and yet nothing happened with
Yeah.
that. I know that you talked about Jeremy Chin. Safety makes sense, but my question really is right now: is Philadelphia losing because of their safeties? Well, they haven't lost. Okay, are they getting ripped because their safeties are playing bad? The answer to me is really no. Obviously, the Blankenship's been very good. Justin Evans was injured, comes back, has a very good second half against the LA Rams. Philadelphia's main struggle has been the nickel cornerback slot, and there aren't a lot of nickels to go around right now. Like nickel cornerbacks, they're this niche thing, right? Because a lot of people don't want to be nickel cornerbacks because most of them aren't paid heavily. You want to be an outside cornerback, so you train your entire life to be an outside guy. There are certain specialists like Avonte Maddox who are undersized who eventually have to, do it just by default. But there aren't a giant bevy of nickel cornerbacks just waiting on the trade market. And so I think Philadelphia's main issue has been nickel. But Bradley Roby, we both talked about it in our post-game shows on Monday, and I think yours was Tuesday afternoon. Roby was great in coverage. He was 2 for 4 when targeted, a 46 quarterback rating. If he keeps that sort of thing up, you're fine. And so Simmons is a luxury. He's someone that you would, go ahead and trade for if you could afford to in terms of the Denver Broncos not asking for much. But my guess is Denver's going to fire sale in order to get big-time draft picks. Like, they're going to do a full reset with everybody but Russell Wilson and Patrick Surtain because Surtain's untradeable and no one wants Russell Wilson's contract. And so, to me,
Right.
if you could get Simmons for a 4th or a 5th, you do it. But if Simmons is costing a second-round draft pick, you have to really, really love the scheme fit and trust he makes you infinitely better than a Justin Evans because right now Evans has been just fine.
Yeah, I agree. And also you talk about, I mean, we're hopefully going to see Sidney Brown because we mentioned the Eagles released the official injury report. It was a limited practice for Sidney dealing with a hamstring injury. So, curious if we're actually going to see him play. But in very limited action, I think we've been pleased, right? I mean, the breakup that he had on Mike Evans in the end zone, which, caused the injury there, but he did phenomenal to recover. And I think he's shown some steps to take those next steps. But I'm with you. Yeah, if you start going too much on it, then all of a sudden you're going, well, did we give up too much draft capital for a somewhat of a need, but to what extent really? So I don't know. It'll be interesting to monitor that as we go along. But it looks like, do we have a super chat? I want to make sure I get that one down. Do we have
we do.
No one? I didn't enter that. So let me make sure I get that one down.
No one said, little off topic, what do y'all think about trading Quez in a 3rd for Jeremy Chin and Barnett for Hardman? You did a good job talking about Mecole Hardman today, being like he's done nothing anywhere. The former draft pick out of Georgia, very little with the Chiefs, nothing with the Jets. He's a healthy scratch. I mean, it's like Chase Claypool all over again, but worse. Chin is fine. I mean, I'm fine with Chin. I mean, Quez in a 3rd for Jeremy Chin would be okay. But let me just pitch this to you here. Philadelphia's a lot of draft picks next year. The reason that good football teams become bad is because of cap space. You see this all the time in the National Football League where teams are really, really good, and then they got to slim down because they got too good, and they got to pay everybody, and then you have a cap issue, and you lose a bunch of players. The Chiefs are a great example of this. The Chiefs have lost the majority of their skill players. They don't have a skilled running back. Pacheco's on a rookie deal. They don't have a skilled wide receiver. Travis Kelce's 34 years old. They barely were able to pay Chris Jones. You take away Patrick Mahomes and insert a mediocre quarterback like a Kirk Cousins or a Dak Prescott on the Chiefs, they're a 10-9 win team at best. Cousins or Mahomes lifts them. Philadelphia is going to have to pay people. The upcoming free agent list is massive. You eventually have to pay DeVonta Smith. Goddard's contract is going to come up. Do you keep him or not? DeAndre Swift is going to finish up his 1-year deal. What do you do with Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham? Do they come back for more years? You need draft picks. That way you can hit on future stars and pay them nothing and prolong this honeymoon process of Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni being elite together. That's the big key here. Now, you got to hit on draft picks, but if you hit on draft picks, you then don't have to give up draft picks and pay somebody like Justin Simmons a lot of money, thereby probably losing a DeVonta Smith or losing a Dallas Goedert, right? There's give and take all throughout this roster when people need to be paid, and there's a lot of people that need to be paid. The more draft picks you have on rookie contracts like Nolan Smith and Sidney Brown and Jaylen Carter, the better chance you have of being good for a lot longer and stay in a Super Bowl window versus letting that close.
Yes, I'm totally with you. Yes, and that's the benefit. The shock, I guess, easiest point that comes to mind is the fact that we have a Jaylen Carter who somehow, it's like, I know we talk about it all the time, but everything that he does, and then we continue to hear more and more about Jaylen Carter and not only the on the field, but then you hear about the off the field and his willingness or want to continually get better, to ask guys to be a sponge, soak up all this information, and the film study. I mean, Jason Kelce said the things that Jaylen Carter's doing, I think he did it on the New Heights podcast today, but the things that Jaylen Carter recognizes in terms of offensive lineman pulling, or you're seeing different recognitions of how the blocking schemes are, that's something that takes years to develop, and Jaylen Carter's just coming from day one. So to get off a little bit on a tangent, but it's easy to with the bread man, like, he's just phenomenal. But to your point, like, yeah, when you get a guy on a rookie contract and you've hit a home run with that, that's how you continue to progress and keep that alive, because like you were alluding to, there's a lot of guys we got to pay. Now, thankfully, how we got a deal done with Jalen, and your window is that 4-ish years like we've talked about.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
going to be enough time, but you do have to pick your spots. It's not exactly, I think there's a certain extent, and as we're, talking, the Phillies are, obliterating the Braves here, but you make the analogy or the similarity there to baseball. The trade deadline at baseball seems to be a little bit different. It's like a hey, a win now mentality, whereas football, it can sometimes come back to bite you a little bit. Now there is some
Yeah.
of an acquisition. I do think that probably both of us agree that there will be an acquisition that Howie makes before the deadline, but to what magnitude? I don't think we're talking about a star player that comes in here to the defense. I mean, unless it's just a crazy deal that you can make happen. But realistically, in my mind, I feel like it's an added piece that maybe provides a little bit of a depth, and whether that's on the O-line, you're looking at a defensive back who may be in play, something like that. But realistically, I'm just not sure that I see something beyond that in terms of a starter. So I'm with you. It totally makes sense as far as those guys that could play, especially because injuries, and again, we could go back to the injuries. Are there any concerns? I haven't seen reports. I don't know if you've read anything yet either, but as far as Justin Evans did not practice and Darius Slay did not practice, I think both of them dealing with a knee. Have you seen anything else besides that, or
I haven't.
do we know?
Yeah, Darius Slay was tweeting at Tyreek Hill earlier today, hinting at the possible matchup that we're going to be at basically a week and a half from now, coming up
Yeah.
2 Sundays from today. I think he's going to be fine. I think it's just the old body, a little bit of soreness, a little bit of a tweak probably from the game on Sunday when he was running all over the field trying to guard Cooper Kupp and did a great job in the second half. I have no issues there. Fletcher Cox returned to practice today. He was limited, so was Sidney Brown. I expect everybody to basically be good to go. And the Jets are a team that they're interesting, and we won't go full Jet preview. I mean, I'm not going to get crazy here, but the Jets
Yeah.
are a football team that if you sleepwalk through the first half, you could wake up in a nightmare and be really, really scared of what you've seen, right? Because this is what the Chiefs did. The Chiefs went into Arrowhead.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift was the headline. They're going to obliterate, Zach Wilson and the horrible
Hmm.
Jets, and they woke up in the fourth quarter and they were a couple of plays away from losing, right? And the Jets defense
And
is
you could
very legit.
argue, some questionable calls in that game,
Yes,
but you're right. Yes.
yes. But with the Jet defense being fantastic, like the Eagles need to make sure they're at full strength, not overlook this game because they're worried about Miami, dominate this game, get out of this game quickly, early, put it away, then start focusing on what's going to be maybe the game of the year, Sunday night against the Miami Dolphins 2 Sundays from now, which you and I are going to be at and be very excited to be there. So injury-wise, I think they're fine, but they cannot overlook a Jet defense that could be a strip sack away, a pick six away, and then maybe a Breece Hall game away from really, putting the Eagles on upset alert.
Yes, and you can't count out anyone, as we know in this league. We've seen some teams, and I love it because you can make the case. I know the easiest or the quickest thing to do for someone, especially we get this back and forth on Twitter, is oh my gosh, we beat this team by 20, and you struggle with
Oh
them or
my
whatever. But
gosh.
it's like, come on, the NFL teams are very competitive, and when you're a team like the Chiefs, when you're a team like the Eagles, you have a target on
Yep.
your back because we were in the championship game. So this whole, again, oh, we dominated this team. We dominated the Patriots, because you keep hearing it from Dallas, but they just got obliterated by the 49ers.
Yeah.
So
Great.
that's ridiculous. But I agree with you. You can't sleepwalk through any game. We saw it last year. You can name any season basically, but you saw it
Mm-hmm.
last year with the Commanders and the turnovers just being sloppy. So you want to be focused. I don't think that there's going to be a look ahead. And again, I think what you keep coming back to, you talked about Jason Kelce being upset multiple times, not only in the game, but just talking about the offense and the play calling with the red zone. There's that continual, I don't know, just not being satisfied. And I think that's a good place to live in. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of the team members have said that. You don't ever want to get satisfied. It's a journey. Jalen has said that continually, and that's good. So we're sitting here. I mean, the best case scenario, we're sitting here undefeated, 5-0. Yet there's still things that we can complain about, and maybe too much, as I've heard a lot in my
Yeah.
comment section, is why are we still complaining about this? Why is this? But the coordinators are themselves bringing it up now, and I think that's a good thing, because early on it was, well, it's early in the season, but now they're even recognizing it, saying, okay, we're 5 games in, and something does need to change. Like, there is a little bit of a weakness. Again, we're 5-0, but you're not going to win playoff games if that red zone inefficiency comes in. So I know we both have talked about it a little bit. I've heard your take as well, but is there a one size fits all, I guess I should say, or a one solution that you see in your mind to kind of fix, if you will? Again, I know we're 5-0, but just to fix or to help that red zone efficiency.
Yeah, I'm torn between it being play calling and being play calling for the wrong personnel. I think both of us showed up the stat yesterday and today that they're targeting Kenny Gainwell too much. They're throwing to Quez Watkins more than DeVonta Smith in the red zone. It feels like Johnson is not calling bad plays. He's calling bad plays to the wrong people, and he feels like if you start working on Dallas Goedert on a flag into the end zone or a stick nod like we saw in that first drive, or you start
Mhm.
targeting AJ Brown with back shoulder throws when you're getting around the 18-yard line, or you start running DeAndre Swift. It's like we got away from running Swift in the red zone, which is just nuts to me. This can be solved very easily, but you mentioned it. You got to clean that sort of thing up. There's a team in Santa Clara, California that's really good, and the Niners know they're really good, and the Niners are on a revenge tour this year, and you're going to have an A-plus game to beat them. You're also going to have an A-plus game to beat the Dolphins, A-plus game to beat the Dallas Cowboys, believe it or not, an A-plus game to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Buffalo Bills. There's a lot of good teams left on this roster, on the schedule. The Eagles have a better roster than all of them. I believe fully they're better than every single roster out there, including the 49ers, because they don't talk about the 49ers secondary. We don't talk about the 49er offensive line not being as good as it once was. And Brock Purdy, to me, is still a mystery because he's only trailed for 3 minutes in his entire career. What does he look like down 10 with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter? Nobody knows. But they need to clean up things like the red zone. That way we don't have a lull, because the big problem with the 49ers is not just the fact they're good, their schedule's easier than ours. And that number one
Mhm.
seed is going to be the difference between hosting a bad football team like the Bucks or maybe the Cowboys in the divisional round, or having the Lions come to you in the divisional round. And you'd much rather not have to play the Lions and then the Niners versus having Niners on the road versus having to play like the Bucks at home, and then you get to play the Niners at home for all the marbles. So it's very
Yeah.
critical that they figure out this red zone. And people complaining that we're complaining don't understand that, because the Eagles have not played anybody serious yet.
Yes, I agree. And there's a part to it which I kind of feels funny or silly, I suppose, saying it, or just odd, right? To say like with playing the Lions is a more dangerous thing, but we've seen it. You know that's a team
Yes.
that looks legit, and so they've been playing very well. But I agree, it does come down to that. Granted, the schedule, like you mentioned, is very difficult. But you have to make sure that you're efficient in all the areas. And again, as we continue to see this upward trend, I mean, at least it's satisfying to say we've seen that over the last several games of you're constantly getting a little bit better. There's a little bit of improvement. Now, we're not going to expect everyone to be humming or firing on all cylinders, or at least all
Yeah.
teams. However, the 49ers, like you mentioned, I mean, they seem to be very close to that mark, which is fine. You know what? Hey, it's a very long season. And as we've seen, Kyle Shanahan can coach himself out of QB. So there's we don't wish any injuries on anybody, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, his schemes sometimes, blocking a guy with your second string tight end doesn't work. So we'll see. Now, realistically, what I would love to happen is I want both teams to be as healthy as possible in December, so that we can, answer that question somewhat. But even if it needs to be in the playoffs when it really matters, all right, let's see who's the better team. Let's answer it for once and for all, who they think we got lucky or whatever. But no, I'm with you. It does matter, as we know. I mean, home field advantage is huge, certainly in the playoffs. I don't know. It just comes back to, can this team continue to grow? Can they continue to mature? Getting back to, I know we kind of opened the show, and for the title, those joining on the comments, make sure to hit the like button, by the way. If you haven't hit the like button, we can get the likes up. Make sure to help out the algorithm. But who should start at linebacker? I know that was the big question. We're seeing it kind of in the comments, things
Yeah.
about, is Morrow, is he a guy that's kind of fool's gold? Have we been duped, so to speak, or maybe not duped, but has he played way above what he's actually capable of? I know that we were kind of leaning towards the idea of, hey, Nakobe Dean, you drafted him for a reason. He started the
Yeah.
season. I mean, Morrow was cut. There's a comment here from DeShero here. It looks like it says Bears cutting Morrow had nothing to do with his skill. He was cap casualty. He was a top 10 off-ball linebacker. But then I've also seen another comment earlier that said Morrow isn't good, from T. Grant. Morrow isn't good. The Bears cut him. Eagles horrified preseason, cut him. Decent backup. That's it. Where do we fall with Nicholas Morrow? Where do you fall with him?
He's a top three linebacker statistically in the NFL right now. I mean,
There you go.
this whole idea that the Bears cut him and then the Eagles cut him, so therefore he's trash, is a terrible argument. It makes no sense. And the reason why it makes no sense is because you've had now 3 weeks to watch with your own eyes and see Morrow be the best linebacker on the field for Philadelphia. He's playing great. He's playing really good football. Now, he might not be able to sustain it, but there's no indication that he can't. He was the leading tackler for the Bears last year for a reason. I picked him to be the starting linebacker when the Eagles first signed him months ago back in March, and for whatever
Mhm.
reason, they just didn't really figure it out in training camp. I fully believe in him right now, but guess what? You have Dean coming back, and whoever plays better going forward gets to play more and probably gets to play the most, and that's going to be, the linebacker coach's decision, Sean Desai's decision, but if Dean is healthy, he'll play, but you can't take snaps away from Morrow because he was cut a couple of months ago and could eventually not play at this level, next week or something like that. I just think it's ridiculous. I think the Nicholas Morrow disrespect is surprising. But I guess it's what we're gonna do right now. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards, again, I know we kind of mentioned it earlier, but I'm still leaning towards the Nakobe Dean. I agree with the absolute hate or saying that Nicholas Morrow is terrible or he's bad. I think that's ridiculous. That's too far fetched. He's played well
Yeah.
enough to say that he's for sure locked in the starting job. He's sent Nakobe Dean to the bench, or there's no way that the Eagles are pursuing that. I think that's a little bit strange or odd, or maybe a little bit of a far-fetched take there, because again, we've seen what the Eagles staff thinks or hopes that Nakobe Dean will be, and it feels like they're going to trickle back in that direction of, let's get Nakobe Dean in there. If he doesn't start this week, you would think maybe it's a situation with he's not a quite 100%. Why rush it?
Yeah.
Let's not do anything that we don't need to. So let's let the linebackers play because they've been playing well already, and then see what it is for the Dolphins. But again, if it's my preference, I mean, Nakobe was smiling afterwards whenever he's getting interviewed, or I guess before practice today. So it seemed like he's ready to go. But I wouldn't mind shaking off that rust. Again, like we mentioned, we're going to be at the Dolphins game.
Sure.
It's going to be fun before the Kelly Green matchup. So hopefully he can be ready to go for that one.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. Philadelphia's one big issue was nickel cornerback. They have hopefully solved the nickel cornerback spot. And Sean Desai, I was reading a fascinating thread on Twitter earlier today about what Sean Desai did defensively in the game against the Rams. He threw the kitchen sink at Cooper Kupp. We saw it in that first drive where he put Goodrich on him, and then Morrow was on him, and then Roby came in, and then they would shadow him with Darius Slay. And the person who was doing the whole write-up, I don't know exactly remember his name, but he was talking about how Desai is really, really experimenting and really mixing things up. And it feels like they're able to do that because they played 5 mediocre to bad teams so far, and they've gotten away with it, and they've been able to win. But he's trying to kind of dial it in. That way, when they play Sunday night against the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert and Tua's extremely fast release, they have their set plan. And so I could see them kind of bouncing things around at least for one more week against the Jets and then trying to kind of figure things out. But again, the only reason they play bad is because the secondary has either been injured or struggled a little bit. If that kind of tightens up, the linebackers are playing great, whether it's Dean, Morrow, or Cunningham, and the front four is unstoppable. I mean, Jaylen Carter is playing at a Pro Bowl caliber level as a rookie. He will win Defensive Rookie of the Year, barring an injury or barring some sort of major setback. And right now, the Eagles are good. I mean, the Eagles are a good football team, and it blows my mind that some people forget that. And we said last time we did a live show, Philadelphia is not perfect last year. They're perfect the final, 4 weeks when they played great in 3 games in the playoffs, and that was it. They lost to the Saints. They lost to the Cowboys. They almost lost to the Colts with Jalen Hurts. The Bears gave them trouble. Like, they were not perfect by any means. This team right now is better than last year and looks a lot more dominant than last year on both sides of the football. We just only remember the Niner game and the Giants game, and that's what's kind of ruined our perspective for where Philadelphia is here at 5-0.
Yeah, there's the perspective is a little bit different. And it's hard to, right? I mean, if we talk about just with the way that the playoff run was, it's easy to remember or recall the best of times versus, the struggles or the areas where it was like, oh my gosh, what is this team? Can we do something? But I remember as we were going to, and I was very wrong. I was glad to be proven wrong. But I remember, I think we were texting right as the playoffs started, and it was like, hey, what do you think the team's gonna do? I was like, I think maybe we could win the first game, but I'm just not really sure. We're stumbling into it. We looked great, and then we started to stumble into playoffs, like you mentioned, the injury with Hurts and coming back. I wasn't really sure, and then we saw what happened. So I agree. What we've seen so far from the team, there should not be any major concerns. There shouldn't be a whole lot of complaining or issues on that side. We're going to continue to get better. There is, again, like we've talked about earlier with the red zone, but I think that you're going to continue to see, and the beauty of it, I mean, with both coordinators, right? I mean, they had their best game, I would say, for sure so far this season against LA. But we're seeing that growth, and we're seeing that taking the next step on both sides. And certainly with Desai, and you got to give him even extra credit too, because look at the injuries that he's had to deal with. I mean, the fact that he has not had his core group, and it's like, oh, hey, by the way, your green dot wearer is gone. So you got to, manage a different linebacker now. The linebackers have been great, give them credit. But the same thing from the secondary. Oh, James Bradbury is going to be out for a game. Oh, by the way, you've lost 2 of your nickel corners, if you go all the way back to the training camp, or start a preseason. two nickel corners that were going to be in there. So he's had to shift a lot of things around. And then on top of that, you're saying the adjustments that he's made in game, we didn't see that last year. So that has led me to be, I mean, I thought he would be good. And I was saying it on several shows throughout the offseason of just kind of what we'd heard. And, he said all the right things, of course, in the press conferences. But I was like, this defense has the potential to be better. Now, numbers wise, sacks wise, I don't think any of us realistically thought that, it would be very difficult to repeat the sack numbers. But in terms of making the adjustments at halftime, I mean, he's far surpassed, I think, almost everyone's expectations. And it's been great. And we're just this early in the season. I mean, once this thing gets really rolling with him and Brian Johnson picking it up, it's incredibly dangerous. So we're in a great spot. For anyone who's worried or concerned, we're in a fantastic spot.
D. DeSharo says Opeta beast mode helped also excited to see his ceiling. He was fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
incredible. Credit to Sua Opeta. They're just fine without Cam Jurgens. Remember when Tyler Steen was going to win this job, and Opeta and Jurgens has something to say about that. It's just hilarious that the offensive line did not miss a beat against Aaron Donald. Now, it's Aaron Donald and a bunch of guys you can't name. It's not the same, 2021 Rams who were great for rushing the passer, but credit to Sua Opeta. I see people talking about how they should trade for another pass rusher. There really isn't one that makes a lot of sense right now who's going to at least be on the trade docket. And Barnett is Barnett. I understand wanting to trade away Barnett, but you don't need to replace Barnett. They have Nolan Smith for a reason, and the expectation is he's going to get better and better as time gets longer and longer into the future. So the trade deadline always is frustrating because we have in our mind that they're going to go out and make some sort of massive splash, some earth-shattering trade. Because recently, we remember the Ajayi trade and how big it was for Philly.
Mm-hmm.
When they traded for Ajayi, he was coming off an injury. He had done nothing in Miami. It was like, okay, it wasn't a big deal. And then it became a big deal, although they used him a lot less in the postseason because of Clement and obviously LeGarrette Blount. But the odds of getting a game-changing player by October 31st is very slim. Last year, they got that pass rusher, Robert Quinn. Remember, he had like double-digit sacks the year before, and he looked like a 59-year-old defensive end who could barely move. So I think people need to calm down on the trade deadline. Howie will sniff, but will he actually bite? I'd be very surprised if he did.
Yeah, I do too. He's going to do his due diligence. There's probably going to be some names that you hear or some more names, rumors as far as that goes. And I feel like there could even be some potential ad or, one potential ad of an addition like we talked about, you add to the depth. But yeah, as far as like that major, big name acquisition or a game changer there, it's just a little bit less likely, I think than you'd see in other sports or other leagues like we talked about. So I don't know. It's something to monitor and keep an eye out. I'm also curious too. I mean, we're going to hear soon. We're going to have to. But what the punter situation is going to look like because they've done this whole punter carousel of Aaron Sitbos for a little while. You do the 3 practice squad elevations. They only do two of course, and then they release him and then get Braden Mann. But now Braden Mann is up against it. Like either you sign him or you go get one of the other guys that you worked out and then just keep this whole idea of the practice squad elevations. It seems like, even though I wouldn't say that Braden Mann's been phenomenal, he did better in the game against LA, but it's not just been, through the roof. He's one of the top punters. However, we got to give some credit to Michael Clay, and I've got to apologize to him, because there are a lot of negative comments that I was making, and I think a lot of people were making about Michael Clay, but according to, some of the stats and metrics, I mean, the Eagles have one of the top special teams, if not the special teams unit in the league. That's ridiculous. I mean, who could have seen that coming? But again, we've got better coordinators maybe than what we expected.
Yeah, credit to Michael Clay, because everyone was like, why did you keep this guy? Why did we keep Britton Covey, right? Britton Covey's trash, and now Covey's one of the top 5 returners, and Clay's, coordinating with the best special teams unit in the National Football League, and it helps out. You have Jake Elliott, and you're kicking a lot of field goals as well, which, Jason Kelce said was frustrating today. But, credit to Clay and credit to Kelce. Do you think there is credit to Covey. Do you think there is a big move, maybe not for Philadelphia, but the rest of the league at the trade deadline? Kirk Cousins' name. He was asked today if he'd waive his no-trade clause to be traded. They were working out Colt McCoy earlier this week. They're going to put Justin Jefferson on IR. Do you think something like that's going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know. It still seems kind of crazy if something like that would. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's impossible because we have seen some wild things happen, but I don't know. As of right now, I'm leaning towards a no. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I go back and forth on this. I'm having a hard time answering because you're right. I mean, they put Justin Jefferson on IR. You see kind of the writing on the wall in that sense of where the organization's heading or what they might want to do. So, yeah, I don't know. If I had to pick right now, I would still say no, but it
Yeah.
wouldn't totally shock me either if all of a sudden, we woke up or just one day we're like, oh, there it is. Wow, they actually made a big acquisition or big move on that side. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's interesting, right? I would be very, very surprised if you move a quarterback in the middle of the season, right? You got to build camaraderie. You got to build, trust with the receivers. The idea that Kirk just waltzes to the Jets and makes them, Super Bowl team is very unlikely. So I'd be very, very surprised if that were to be the case at all. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and you've already given up a lot, I mean, to do the whole Aaron Rodgers
Yes.
thing too, so if it's the Jets in particular, specifically with that, I think that makes it even crazier, but, yeah, it's I guess I would say again, nothing's impossible because we've seen some crazy things go on, but something to, I guess, see or keep an eye out for. Looks like we've got a comment here too I was gonna get to, says, let's see, Mommy I Poop said, "Is Nolan gonna get any playing time, you think?" So that's a good
Did he
question,
play in
and
the
that's a
Rams
question.
game?
He did play in the Rams game, but it was what, like 2 snaps or so. I think I saw the
Mm,
number. It was not a lot. So I
okay.
think he's gonna get some. It's a little unfortunate because I think the most snaps, if I remember correctly, that he's gotten so far is against the Commanders, and that was right after
Hmm.
Desai said, "Hey, I need to get some packages," where he goes out there. Again, it's all scheme based, so certain teams are probably gonna be more favorable of a matchup. Now, I'm not saying that Derek Barnett is the answer. I don't think that a lot of us would say that, but Nolan didn't play great. As much of a Nolan supporter as I am,
Yeah.
Nolan didn't play great against the Commanders, and we had other guys that were playing well against the Commanders. So I think that Desai said, "Hey, you know what? The way the game is working out, the flow of the game, who we want in there, and what level of confidence that the guys have, Nolan's, he's still kind of just slowly, easily getting, kind of put into this defense to not overwhelm or, I don't exactly know what the case is, but I do feel like he's going to get more playing time. I think, again, as the season goes on and what Desai has mentioned or alluded to, we're going to see the Rook out there. But it's obvious he's not a Jaylen Carter yet. Hopefully he could be, but so far it is just kind of a slowly get him acclimated. I feel like it'll be a next season more of a chance for him to fully break out. But it still wouldn't surprise me if you're seeing him as like, oh, hey, he's getting, I don't know, what 15% of the snaps once we get
Yeah.
late in the season if he's fully acclimated. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm wrong.
he's just not up to speed. He's not ready. It's a big change to go to the National Football League. Even when you're playing pass rusher at the SEC, you're still going against a lot of left tackles who are gonna not play in the big leagues, right? They're gonna have normal jobs like you and me, and so it's just been slow. And Barnett has the experience. He has the history. He's a little bit bigger. He at least gives you a higher chance of getting a sack. It comes down to sack win rate, right? How often do you win against tackles? How often do you get sacks with Reddick and Sweat being at the top? Then you start kind of withering down to Brandon Graham, and then you go to Derek Barnett, and then below that is Nolan Smith, and he's just not ready. And you're lucky that Carter is as good as he is because you would have 2 first round draft picks that don't do much. At least your first round draft pick is doing a lot. But that's not to say that
Mhm.
Nolan won't be great by week 10 or week 13 or something in the postseason with fresh legs or 2024. And if he's great in 2024, that's fine. That's fantastic. As long as he's good eventually, but it seems like right now they're very, very fine with not playing him, and honestly, probably for the best because they've had some close games that have come down to needing some pass rush abilities, and then the later part of these games, you see guys like Hassan Reddick winning, and guys like Nolan Smith probably couldn't have done that, and that's why they kind of keep excuse me keep on the football field.
Finally, too. Yeah, you mentioned Hassan Reddick.
Yes,
That was going back all the way, to the
yes,
game. I know you were kind of hopping in and out of the broadcast
yeah,
there, but at halftime, you called it. You're like, "Hey, where's Hassan Reddick? We haven't seen him." And then he listened to the show. He must have, been listening during
tuned in,
halftime.
yeah.
But he was like, "All right, I'll show you up." So, got the couple sacks. Really good to see, of course. Anytime for just a motivator or to kind of get on the right run there. But I mean, man. Hassan Reddick now, you could make the case, it's 2 games since the thumb injury or the thumb cast being removed,
Yeah.
I should say. 3 sacks, and he's going to go up against a backup now because the
Mm-hmm.
Jets starting right tackle in Vera Thomas, or I
Vera
think that's his
Tucker,
name.
yeah,
Vera
Elijah Vera
Tucker.
Tucker. Mm-hmm.
Yes, is going to be out with the Achilles injury, out for season. So never a good matchup to begin with when you're taking on this Eagles D line. But you mentioned Reddick. It would not shock me at all if he has another really big game. And like we were talking about when his, struggles or semi struggles, because he wasn't doing a whole lot, then the thumb cast gets removed, and hey, he's starting to make some big plays. Josh Sweat, as Fran Duffy had shared, was to him the MVP, even though he didn't really show up on the stat sheet as far as the sack numbers. Fran Duffy said on the review on his all 22, if you saw that, was he's making plays all over the place. He's getting pressures. He's helping out with other D linemen who were able to get sacks and able to get the numbers there. So this could be a really positive game. I mean, Zach Wilson, I know, again, not to go fully Jets mode here, but Zach Wilson is going to give you opportunities. Let's just say that. He's going to either hold the ball too long, so you're going to get some sacks, or he's going to make really dumb decisions early, and you're going to get opportunities for picks. So if you can capitalize on that, I think we set up for a really good way. But curious, what do you expect to see from, I guess, the defense, but more specifically from the pass rush?
Well, people wanted to criticize me that I was ripping Reddick, but I mean, Reddick did nothing the first, 4 games of the season. He literally did nothing, and he didn't do much in that Rams game until the very end. Now, I think that he's probably back. I think the Jets game is going to be kind of the solidifier in my eyes that he is back, but the amount of double teams Jaylen Carter's demanding, Reddick's sack numbers should be higher. And my hope is that now that he's getting even more attention, that is Carter, the defensive tackle spot, that Reddick's numbers start to go ahead and climb. But I mean, people try to pretend like Reddick was doing something the first 3 weeks. He was doing nothing the first 3 weeks. He was not winning. He was not getting pressures. He was doing very little. And finally, maybe thumb, maybe not. Who knows? Starting to figure things out. Credit to him. I obviously love Hassan Reddick and want him to be as great as possible. So good to have him back. And you're right about the Jets. I did an interview with a Jets guy today. I'm going to post it to my show tomorrow or Friday or whenever. And he was talking about how Zach Wilson's played better the past couple of weeks. He had that kind of miracle performance, the out-of-body experience against the Chiefs, and good for him. Yeah. Denver was better than or worse than people give him credit for, because people are saying that he was a lot better in the Denver game. He's still playing at a very low level. The Jets beat you if they force multiple turnovers where they can score or position their offense in the red zone, or if Breece Hall goes off. And Breece Hall was incredible against the Denver Broncos last week. Did they play Denver? Yeah, but Denver's one of the worst defenses historically ever. So you bottle up Breece Hall and you say, hey, Zach, beat me. And he does, then we can really start to panic about Philadelphia. But if Zach Wilson single-handedly beats you on Sunday, then we have real problems, and we're not winning a Super Bowl. It's very simple.
Yeah. There's again, to still, I guess, put the disclaimer out there, like we said, you could lose to anyone in this league, but I agree if we see a Zach Wilson coming out there and we're just not getting anything on that side of the defensive side of the ball, there's going to be some definite concerns. I feel bad for the Broncos, but like you say, they're a dumpster fire, and the way they lost that game too, they might have lost already. The whole Russell Wilson fumble and just the sideline interaction between him and Sean Payton, that was crazy. I don't expect that we'll see that. Again, you can't just walk into this. You can't sleepwalk into this game, but the opportunities will certainly be there. Let's just say I'm happy to have the Philly defense in fantasy. It is a very easy decision to go ahead and do that. So you want to start them.
Where are you at in our fantasy league? What's your record?
Yeah, so I am
1-3.
Oh, okay. I'm 3-2.
Must
and
be nice.
It's not too bad. But I've been a little fortunate. I'm not gonna lie. I've played a couple teams. If we're looking at the points for category, I've not been the best performer, but you know what? Again, I'll take the wins. I feel somewhat, even though I'm not 5-0, but somewhat like the Eagles. There's a lot of potential at the group. We just haven't seen it so far. So hopefully you can turn it around though with the 1-3.
I'm trying to. I've hit my stride in my other league. I made a trade for Jamar Chase, Raheem Mostert, Jared Goff, a big blockbuster trade. I gave away like 4 players to get them, and that was right when A-Chain goes down, and then right when Goff starts playing well, and then Jamar Chase's 3 touchdowns. So I started to kind of figure things out. So it is what it is. D. DeShiro says, you guys are the best show. Great knowledge and content. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. DeShiro, make sure you guys sub to both channels. And we have plenty more stuff happening next couple of days and weeks as well. Let's go for a couple more minutes. I am kneeling this entire time, and obviously still can't sit from the surgery, and we are getting close to being at capacity. So we'll wrap it up here. Y'all have Swift on fantasy. I have Swift in our YouTube league. I don't have him in. I have Breece Hall in my personal league.
Yep. I've got him. I'm trying to think, because I've got like 5 leagues. I think we talked about this before. You get in the issue or the problem of playing so many. It's hard to keep track for one that you're rooting against one player and versus or for the other one in a different league. So it kind of gets difficult. But I feel like I have like one league with at least one of each of the big name Eagles players. Like I've got Jalen Hurts in one league, I've got AJ in another, DeVonta in another, Dallas Goedert, DeAndre Swift. So it's just kind of all spread out. So I guess it's a good thing because I can cheer for them. Thankfully, last week I think was the first week, if you believe it, that I didn't have an opposing player for the first 4 weeks of the Eagles schedule. Oddly enough, I had at least one opposing player, so that was never a good cheer for situation. But anyway, we're not doing too bad. Some leagues are good, other ones not so great, but we'll take it.
There you go. Love to see that. You got a prediction for Sunday before we wrap things up? What's your score prediction?
That's a good question. I really haven't gotten to dive into that yet.
Yeah.
But I'll give you a quick just fire from the hip. I always like to see what the official line is. I saw it earlier. Has it moved at all? It's I think it was like -7. Was it 7?
I think it's stayed.
Okay, I'm just checking to make sure. Yeah, still it looks like still 7. It seems like it's easy. It seems like it's easy money. Like you look at it and you go, okay, Eagles should win 7. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if this is one of those that the defense of the Jets kind of keeps them around or or kind of helps them stick around for a little bit longer. So I'll go with I'm gonna say it's lower scoring, and we'll go with the Eagles 23 and the Jets 17. I'll say something like that.
I think it was 24-13, something like that. I don't know how they score, but yeah, it's gonna be fun, and we're gonna be able to broadcast that. Should be live. Hopefully, I can sit down. We'll be fine and ready to go for a little Sunday afternoon for Eagles and Jets. So, all right, we're gonna end just a little bit early today. I got to 15 minutes though, so credit to myself. I was wondering how we're gonna be able to do this. We were able to do it. So we're gonna do longer and longer Wednesday lives as my surgery continues to heal. We appreciate you guys watching. For Josh Davis, I'm Thomas Mott, signing off. See you guys.
We'll see you. Go Birds.